Good evening, everyone in India, and good morning to you, Angel. And I know it definitely is an early morning for you, so thank you for doing this.
Good morning.
Good morning, yes. We go a long way, and it's so impressive to see your journey as an educator, but before that, as a student, an international student from underrepresented sort of community to make it to find universities, get a great education, and create a track record of success, and then now giving back to institutions, not just one, but the entire international community of universities and admissions counseling community all over the world. So NACAC, which is the National Association for College Admission Counseling, is based in Washington D.C., and that's where you are currently, I'm assuming.
Yes.
And I know it's an affiliate. It also has affiliate organizations, which I've been, privileged to be part of. One of them is the International ACAC, which is the International Association for College Admissions Counseling, and they do wonderful professional development events, regional conferences, and annual conference hosted by one of the finest universities, particularly in the US and North America currently. But they also have so many regional events. So many heads of schools and counselors who are attending today's session have the opportunity to learn more about International ACAC from Angel as well, but at large, also have questions answered. We've already got questions streaming in, Angel, so I'll pick a few. Your background has been so inspiring, and I've been talking to students who wish to also belong on a global stage. They're in India from low-income background families or underrepresented communities. And what advice do you wish to give to a student who has that ambition? That would be my first question.
Great. Thank you, Arjun. And thank you for having me. And it's wonderful to see you again. You and I go way back. We've known each other for many years. Thank you for also all the work you do with students and for this platform. I guess the way that I would start for any student, family who is on this webinar and thinking about how do I get to the next stage in my life, there is an extraordinary amount of opportunity for young people all over the world. And you mentioned my own story. I actually grew up very poor in the Caribbean, in Puerto Rico, and then eventually came to the United States. And for me, the reason I do this work is I'm incredibly passionate about the fact that there is so much talent all over the world, and many of you on this webinar represent that talent. And we need to provide opportunities for young people across the globe. So the advice I would give to young people is to hold on to those dreams and to pursue your dreams and to know that not only do you belong, especially if you are thinking about going to universities, whether it's in India or in the United States or in other parts of the world, there is a place for you. You need to continue to work hard, but know that there are many of us who do this work in higher education whose entire passion is about making sure that young people can pursue their dreams and that they are given the opportunities to attend universities, which Arjun and I will talk about the how in a little bit, but also that once you arrive, that you feel like you belong. I have been very fortunate. I've spent a lot of my career on college campuses working with international students in the transition to higher education. And these students came from all over the world, all backgrounds, many underrepresented, many students who were very low income and are now living extraordinary lives. So I wish that for you as well, and know that there is lots of opportunity across the globe.
Thanks for the opening remarks, Angel. That really sets the agenda, which is students and families and educators on this esteemed panel today would be interested to know about how you view international undergraduate admissions as a process. And of course, with new technologies and many new changes that we see afoot across the world, what major changes have you seen in the, say, last decade, which has actually progressed the conversation around admissions? And what do you see in the horizon in terms of what admissions counseling sort of services as well as schools could offer to be in sync with the changing needs of students? So it's a pretty loaded question. So you can sort of attack it from any direction.
Yes. I mean, we could do a whole webinar just about changes. Here is where I see a lot of good news. I think over the past decade or 15 years, there have been lots of changes, and there continues to be an appetite for change in the college admissions process. Here's some of the good things. During the time that I have been in this work, which is about 27 years, there has been more international student enrollment, not just in the United States, but across the world. I think global student mobility continues to expand. So again, there continues to be a lot more opportunity. I also think that there are more scholarships for young people than ever before. And I think that's something that sometimes is very intimidating, and young people are worried about how will I pay for it. But one of the things that has been so meaningful for me in my career is that I've always worked at universities that were committed to scholarships and funding for international students, so that not all international students who are wealthy are the only ones who have the opportunity. And so I think we need to stop and celebrate that moment, because that has been a big change, I would say, over the last 10, 15 years. I think the admissions process, particularly here in the United States, has changed. During COVID, the majority of institutions of higher education in the United States went test optional, meaning that you don't have to submit an SAT or an ACT in order to be admitted to the institution. That's a huge change in the college admissions process, and in many ways actually removes a barrier for young people, especially international students who maybe don't have access to the exam, or did not grow up in a curriculum that prepares them for that particular exam. I think the other thing that's been really inspiring for me is seeing colleges and universities spending more time thinking about how they give students credit for things that they already bring to the table, like character and motivation, and the kinds of things that they are already innately proud of. And so it's no longer just about your extracurricular activities and your testing and your grades, but also, who are you as a human being? What kind of qualities will you bring to our college campus? More and more institutions are focusing on that. And I actually think that's a good thing for young people. It takes a little bit of stress off of them, because you just have to be who you are. I always used to say, when I was an admissions officer, colleges, they just want you to be who you are, and to, in your application, show who you naturally are so that you can contribute to the campus community. So I'll stop there. I can go in a lot of different directions, but those are some of the things that have changed over the last decade or so.
Thanks, Angel. The one thing that most students have access to is intelligence on their fingertips, literally.
Yes.
So you can subscribe and get intelligence for $20 a month.
Yes, we're all using it, right?
If you have to go beyond intelligence to figure out a student, and which the US system or the liberal arts education system has always been sort of advocating for, the whole student, the conscious being within the student. What are the measures students can be ready for to maybe have more video response questions or more tech sort of ways to identify students' true voice, instead of depending on standard methods of teacher references, which are obviously great, but also the essays? So anything that you could address. What's in the future? What possibly is the future of admissions assessment, and how do college admissions committees address all the new technology that's available to students?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I would say it's evolving. I think many colleges and universities are still grappling with the question, how do we meet students where they are today, knowing that they're all on AI? Many of us are on AI. What are some of the ways that we actually incorporate AI into the admissions process? knowing that students are already using the tool, is there a way, for example, to ask students questions that are related to how they use AI, or perhaps saying, using AI, submit this kind of project, right? Because so much of AI is about the kinds of questions that you ask it, about how you analyze what you receive. And so colleges and universities are still grappling with that. There are lots of questions right now that the entire profession is asking itself. And I don't know that we have the answers yet, but we are talking about, for example, if a student uses AI to help them with the essay, is that ethical? Should we be asking for essay questions and say to a student, you cannot use AI in the process? Or, as some professors are doing on college campuses right now, they're actually using AI in the classroom and teaching students how to use it ethically. And so, I don't have a crystal ball, but if I were to predict the direction that we are going to move in as a profession in college admissions, it's probably going to be the integration of AI. The one thing that I will say admission officers are testing behind the scenes is, how do you use AI to read the applications, to evaluate applications? We will never get to the point where a human being doesn't read the application, but I do think there's a lot of things, and here's an example I will use, Arjun. When I was an admissions officer, because this was pre-AI, I spent a lot of time recalculating GPAs and handwriting, different curriculum across the world. AI can do that for me now, so that I can spend more time getting to know the student. And so I think AI will also help students around video submissions. A lot of schools, give you the opportunity to do a video or an audio or things like that. And so I do think it's going to be integrated into the process. But it will, I think it's still evolving, and I think the colleges are still asking themselves the really difficult questions about what's ethical and what's not ethical.
That's a wonderful response. Thank you, Angel. Much needed at this point. Let's move on to what really happens in universities and campuses. Beyond admissions, students have to be ready for college, and it becomes so important to be prepared. Being, in your earlier position as VP of enrollment and student success, you've pioneered this work in this field to have organizations create teams to support student success. How would you define student success beyond grades and the job offers that they might land up with?
Yes, I love this question because I think we have historically defined student success as grades, right? I think particularly here in the United States, there's a growing movement around student success, which is a little bit broader, and that is that students feel a sense of belonging on a college campus, that students feel like they have the tools and the resources to be successful on their campuses, that students also are going through their university years with a plan and a strategy for what's going to happen after they graduate, and being open-minded about what that path and that journey looks like. One statistic I will share is, here in the United States, 73% of employees do not work in the major that they had in college or university. Yet we are still coaching students and advising students that major equals job, for example. So the movement around student success is also around helping students really find a passion and meaning and purpose and community. So much of success in college is not about your individual work. Yes, you're going to go to class, you're going to have homework, you're going to do all of the things that students do. But there is so much more. You're living in a community. You are part of a larger community. And so creating community, a sense of belonging, is a big part of the work that the student success movement is a part of. What we've also found is, if students don't feel that, if they don't feel belonging, if they don't feel community, they usually are not successful on campus. So we're trying to broaden the definition of what it means to be successful.
very often I meet students who take time settling in, and there are a few who sort of like take fish to water. They're immediately in an environment they feel comfortable with. Well, sometimes we talk about success in terms of, oh, that student was so comfortable and was able to achieve blah blah at this university. But there are also those turnaround cases where they've dealt with maybe cultural adjustments and invisibility, maybe at a campus which is not as diverse as they wished it was. I know this resonates with your story as well, as an international student moving to the US and then creating a life for yourself there. What do you think could be systems or resources or community sort of interventions which could help students feel welcome, feel comfortable, and also grow and thrive, and eventually contribute?
Yeah, I love that question. And again, I think there's a growing movement. This is another thing that I think has been wonderful about the work that US universities are doing. And I know it's happening in Canada and the UK and Australia and other places. Again, tied to the fact that belonging, there's a lot of research that shows when students feel community and belonging, they actually are set up for success. And so a lot of the ways that institutions are doing this is first and foremost, creating a really strong transition and orientation program for students. Most universities will have an international student orientation program. That's where you're going to get a mentor. That's where you're going to get to understand the system. Because I love, you use the term deer in headlight, and I have seen those students for so many years on my campuses where they come in, they're a little afraid, but usually by the end of their first semester, they're understanding the system, they're understanding how to navigate the space. The one piece of advice I would give to students as they transition is, again, finding community is so important. And so a lot of the research and also my own personal experience on college campuses has shown that having just a few close network of friends in that first semester is actually going to set you up for success. I think isolating yourself is something that could be actually very dangerous. It could have the opposite effect, where then you end up feeling very lonely and you end up feeling like maybe this isn't a good fit for me. And also finding community. I have two pieces of advice here which might feel contradictory. I always tell students, especially international students, find a few students, all you need is really one or two, who maybe, let's use India as an example, maybe are Indian students, they share your background, your culture, because all of us need that in order to thrive. However, don't let that be your only community on a college campus. So begin to slowly spread out, and then try to meet other international students, try to meet American students or Canadian students, depending on where you attend university. And slowly but surely, you begin to expand your circle. And you can always go back again to that comfort zone and finding your friends who are from India, but also slowly beginning to expand your circle, because one of the reasons why international students study abroad is because they want to create a community of diverse students from all over the world. And so finding that close-knit community is important, but also joining student clubs and organizations. Most colleges and universities will have a international student organization. They might even have an Indian student organization, or a South Asian student organization. And so finding those communities are so critically important. And I would say it's not just about students. I promise you, there are faculty members and staff members on campus who perhaps share some of your lived experience. Reach out to those individuals, try to create community with them. It's one of the really nice things about college campuses. Many of them are very diverse, particularly on the faculty or staff. So, Arjun, the last thing I'll say about this is I have learned this one very clear thing, not only as a student on campuses, but then working on campuses for the majority of my career. everyone on campus has imposter syndrome. Everyone feels like someone else knows more than they do. And so, when you arrive on that campus, know that everybody's feeling a little afraid and a little nervous. Most young people are feeling vulnerable, regardless of whether you're an American student at an American university or an Indian student attending a Canadian university. Everyone's a little bit nervous. And so lean into that and know that you are not alone.
So I think the follow-up question to this would be, how do institutions approach international students and their issues? Could be social isolation, or worried about what's next, say financial uncertainty, or visa stress around, say, H-1B visas, even after they graduate from college and they have their jobs. So kind of they start thinking and fearing the future, which hasn't really arrived yet. And that could kind of snowball into mental health issues. So what do you think institutions are doing, or will be doing more or less, or improving on to help students approach their mental health problems, as well as at the same time create a way to address international student issues in a much more sensitive way?
Another question that I'm so grateful you asked me, because you started the webinar by asking what has changed over the last 10 years. And I would say another thing that has changed is the extraordinary attention that institutions of higher education are paying to student mental health. Student mental health, I would say it's a crisis all over the world. It's not just in the United States, and institutions are taking it very seriously. There's so many support services on campus. Most campuses actually have a health center with mental health services. During orientation, we talk about the services and we encourage students to actually go and seek out, therapy or whatever kind of mental health services they might need. And so it's something, at least here in the United States, that we do talk about pretty openly. And I actually think that's a wonderful thing, because the amount of stress that students are under, not just because of their grades or their exams, but also because they're making a huge cultural transition. They're leaving their families at home. They're under an extraordinary amount of pressure. And so, there's lots of different kinds of services. And I would say my biggest piece of advice is, please use the services. I am always amazed at how many international students, they won't go to the health center to say, I'm not feeling really well, or I might need to speak to someone. These are services, by the way, which your tuition and fees cover, right? And so they are there for you. There are also lots of different services that are going to help you with some of the things that you might be stressed about. So, for example, if you are already in your first or second year of university, worried about your H-1B or how you're going to transition into a job, or maybe you want to stay in the United States or Canada or Australia after you graduate, the Career Services Office is one of the most wonderful resources. The Career Services Office, their number one job is to make sure that you have a plan and a strategy for when you graduate from their university. Because the guarantee that they have is, if you attend our university and you do well, we are going to help you find a job or go to graduate school or whatever it is that you decide to do afterwards. And so taking advantage of those services. Another thing that contributes to the mental health is maybe some of the students who are really struggling with the rigor of the curriculum. Maybe they're struggling with writing or math. There are writing centers and writing tutors and math centers and math tutors. So the level of services really is extraordinary. One of the things I found, however, Arjun, is that many international students, they shy away from taking advantage of those services, or they feel like, I don't want to take on those services because maybe that means that I'm not doing so well. The reason those services are there are to support you.
Let's address some of our audience questions. The one thing that's I can group together some of these questions. this webinar, the CBSE's community is over 29,000 schools in India and around 300 schools, which are affiliated schools outside India, which follow the CBSE curriculum. So there's this huge population which is interested to know more about how to be prepared and how to know their options, or what is it that the schools could do to create a robust college admissions and career advising service.
Yeah, it's a tough question, but an inspiring question, because I'm delighted to hear that students are continuing to expand their choices and families are excited about different kinds of opportunities. I'll start broadly, which again, to repeat, mission deans from all over the world, telling you how to visit India on a yearly basis. There are college fairs. Actually, my organization is going to have one in Delhi, not too far from you, Arjun, on Monday, August 25th at Shiv Nader School. Attend those. Again, those are free for parents and students. You get to actually speak to the university officials from all over the world and ask them directly, what does it take to get in? What is the process? What are the fees? And so also forming relationships with admission officers is something that admission officers from all over the world are open to. If you're interested in a particular university, reaching out to those universities via their website. When I was an admissions officer, on the website, it showed that I traveled in India, for example, and so Indian students would contact me directly if they had questions. And so again, feel free to begin to try to create these relationships with universities. And if you can get access to an experienced counselor, that always would be a wonderful opportunity as well. Arjun, I know that you have a lot of experience in this area. Any advice you would give to families?
Yes, I think you've covered a lot of ground on this topic already. I think knowing where you belong is so important. So the conversations about right fit are super important, and I think students sometimes do not spend enough time researching universities. The other thing that I would say is work with your school counselors and teachers. They are your true advocates in some sense. So putting your best foot forward, keeping them informed about what you're doing intellectually beyond school. If you're doing something, keep updating them, participate in class, and also have a mood and an attitude towards service to your school. Contribute instead of criticize, compare, or contrast. So embrace your situation and create your future. I think that's what I always tell students. It's a powerful way to shift your paradigm and then work towards opportunities. The other thing I would tell students is to create stories which are connected through authenticity, where your experiences are something which really exudes who you are as a person. It sort of also shows that you have the discernment to pick the right topic or theme to develop it in a way that is only you. There's always a sense of discipline to approach this process, and I think very often students do not organize themselves really well, and having that ability to go through the fire and complete the process and shine through is another piece of advice I would give. Another thing is, don't hurt yourself too much in this process. There is too much comparison, too much competition. These are words which inhibit your growth, and so students should perhaps look at it as an opportunity to collaborate, contribute to wherever they are, and look forward to avenues for growth when they are researching colleges or even when they get there. Very often I tell students, think of yourself as a second-year college student. Think of yourself as a sophomore instead of high school junior or senior. What is it that I'm going to do there when I'm on campus? Instead of how do I get in? Changing that question, it just reframes many things.
And Arjun, I'm sure you and I have talked about this before, but the other advice I give to people is just keep an open mind, right? Because I think we live in a culture, whether you live in India or the United States, it doesn't matter. Everybody focuses on the top universities, right? Or the rankings. And I can tell you that there are thousands of incredible, wonderful institutions that could be a good fit for you, your students, your children. But you need to take the time to do the research and to explore and to keep an open mind. I went to an undergraduate alma mater that maybe a lot of people may not hear about, but that was the perfect experience for me, and it changed my life, fundamentally changed my life, and put me on a trajectory to where I am today. So there are lots and lots of different institutions, and I think keeping an open mind about where, and by the way, it doesn't just have to be the United States. If you're thinking about abroad, there's so many really interesting institutions all over the world that would be delighted to have you. But also, even if you're thinking about here in the United States, we have over 4,000 colleges in the United States. And so keeping an open mind about where is also really important.
Now let's address the elephant in the room. Questions related to so many geopolitical shifts, and which might actually impact international student mobility with quite sort of increasing pace. We see changes afoot in global politics which make the world seem not so safe anymore. And for parents half the way across the world, they have these visions and dreams for their children, but they might not really be getting that confidence to complete the application process, or there's something that is holding them back to sort of help students follow their dreams. What do you think is going on in the world today, and how do admissions as a community address this to in a sincere way, but also call a spade a spade?
Yeah. This is the hardest question you've asked me today. What do you think is going on? Look, I'll be really honest and transparent. We're living through a difficult moment in history. And I don't think it's just in the United States. We're seeing lots of geopolitical challenges across the globe, various wars going on, and that is impacting the day-to-day lives of millions of people all over the world. In the United States, we had an election. There's a new administration. The administration has a different priority. And we are seeing almost the closing of borders, if you will. And several things can be true at the same time. While certainly we are challenged politically, I spend a lot of time on university campuses all over the United States, and every university president, dean of admission, international student advisor reminds me international students are still welcome here. We want to continue to see our students thriving. We want them to come, attend, have a wonderful experience, and explore. And we will do everything we can to make sure that we protect them and that we cultivate them when they arrive on our campuses. I will tell you that despite what you see on the news, and what you see on the news is very real. However, the majority of students in the United States are still having, a wonderful experience. They're going through their daily college lives. I was on a college campus a couple of weeks ago, and I met with a bunch of international students, and they were getting ready for graduation, and they were so excited about the future. And it just brought me so much joy, because I think if you watch the news on a daily basis, you forget that there are thousands and thousands of students, actually millions of students in the United States on college campuses who are having extraordinary experiences. And so to the point that you made, Arjun, the advice I would give to parents is don't give up on the dream for your children because politics change very quickly. And so the other thing is, I also understand about being cautious and about making decisions very carefully for your students and making sure that you are doing everything to balance making sure the student has the opportunity, but also making sure that the student is going to be safe and well cared for. My advice would be, if you are a student who's about to begin this process, don't give up on that dream, but continue to follow the news and the politics. And also, once you know where you're applying, again, reach out to those admission officers, create those personal relationships with your advisors, because they are the ones who are going to be able to give you the information of what's really happening on the ground on a daily basis. But Arjun, I'll be real. The situation in the United States right now is a little bit more challenging than it was just 6 months ago, particularly for international students. But there are many of us in this field, including myself, sitting here in Washington, D.C., who are advocating with Congress and senators and politicians to remind them of the importance of international students coming, studying, and flourishing in the United States.
Thanks. That's quite reassuring. And I know you've been a strong advocate for, kind of turning back the clock and have some of these new policies that have come in place repealed in some sense. So thank you for the great work that you're doing and your team's doing. A little bit about NACAC, though. I'd really love to know more, and the affiliate organizations. We've touched upon regional conferences and the international ACAC. As NACAC grew and spread, and its purpose was to also go beyond the boundaries of the United States, what do you think are the biggest opportunities for growth, and also how can we include more schools from maybe underserved parts of India in particular? What could be a structure for that? Who are the resource people who could be engaged or contacted? What are the other support systems that could be planned for in the future to have a very robust college admissions counseling community in India, in say tier 2, tier 3 cities and towns?
Be a part of our community, go onto our website, nacacnet.org. And if you feel like you are under-resourced and that perhaps you want to be a part of our community but may not have the resources, don't let that stop you. Actually, email us. We have on our website, we have contact pages that go directly to our membership experience team. Tell us your story. What are you looking for? Because if you are a member, a head of school, a principal, a college advisor, a school counselor, an independent counselor, we want you to be a part of our community because we are a global college access community. The way I describe it is anyone who is helping young people in the transition to college process, whether it's here in the United States or abroad, should be a member of our community. We do events all over the world, and we are starting to do events in India. And so we would love for you to attend those events. As Arjun mentioned, we also have affiliate organizations. We have 23 of them, and one of them is our international ACAC organization. And so being a part of that organization, I think it also gives you a tremendous amount of professional development, resources, but also what it gives you access to is the community of practitioners who are doing this work. One of the things that's so unique about NACAC in the association space of higher education is that we actually bring high schools and colleges together. And so at our events, you will see the Dean of Admission from some of the schools that Arjun has listed behind his screen here. They will be at these events with school counselors talking about the issues of the day and students, and talking about how they can work together to create more access for students. And so I really would like to invite you to be a part of this community, and also to invite you to have your students go onto our website, create profiles, come to our events. We would love to see them there.
Excellent. I think that's going to be a game changer. We have more dialogue and more connect and more professional development opportunities for the counseling community here in India. What would you think is an ideal kind of partnership between high schools in India and US universities? I mean, I know it's a arm's length sort of relationship. Schools do their bit, colleges do their assessment of students who apply. However, we do see that there are schools which kind of become feeder schools, or schools that have a history of admission record which is quite desirable for some other schools. So how do you address this in a changing demographic in India? How can schools aspire to be in that coveted list of schools which are considered portals for perhaps a better future for their students?
Well, actually, this is related to the last question, which is you need to become a part of this community, right? And so you need to be a member of these organizations, because at these conferences, at these events, these online events, whether they're in person or online, is where the universities are networking with the high schools. I will tell you that many of the high schools that I would visit across the world, it was because I met a counselor who said to me, at a conference, who said, I'd love for you to come visit my school. The way that I often think about high schools is that high schools need to market just as much as universities market, right? And so it's okay. For example, let's say you're a counselor in a smaller city in India, and you see that a lot of your students are interested in applying to a particular school. You might reach out to that school and say, I have a lot of students who are really interested in attending your university. Would you be interested in coming to visit us when you're visiting India, for example? We would love to host you. So a lot of this is about relationship development. Even though we're a very large profession, I always say the relationships are very small. We all know each other. We develop these relationships together. And so don't be afraid of reaching out to universities, inviting them into your space. And also, if they can't come, also just sending them information about you. Let me tell you about my school. Let me tell you about the curriculum. Let me tell you about what's changed over time. And you send that to the representative who travels in India or who travels in the region and represents your students. So it's a reciprocal relationship, but a lot of the ways that these partnerships are formed is still through day-to-day relationships. And Arjun, you and I met over time over those kinds of relationships and networking and conferences. And so I invite anyone on this webinar to become a part of our community.
Thanks again, Angel. This has been fairly enlightening sort of conversation, and I feel enlivened and really happy to have got this opportunity to connect you, and through you, the whole universe of admissions counseling members in our community who've been tirelessly doing what they do. So really appreciate all our fellow counselors in various schools and outreach officers and enrollment officers at universities. It truly is a community that's helping students find right fit institutions. We've touched upon many things, talked about how trends are changing, geopolitical shifts. We've talked about student mobility, opportunities for students from underserved communities, how access can be increased to schools and get the right resources and information. So there's a lot that we've covered. Really, thank you so much, Angel, for sparing this hour with us, and look forward to meeting some of your team members at regional conferences and the International ACAC conference scheduled in 25th August. Is there anything you would like to end with? Is there some information that you would want to share, or some piece of advice that you would want to give students, counselors, parents, anyone?
No, two things I would end with is one, just thank you for taking the time in your evening to be with us. If you are here, it means you care deeply about young people and their futures. And if you are a student or a family, I would say the same thing that I started with, which is there is an extraordinary amount of opportunity for young people all over the world. There's also lots of scholarships. There's actually millions of dollars that go unspent in scholarships every year because students don't apply for them. And so if you are, someone who thinks maybe I don't have the opportunity,